Alright, if you're watching this video about the rough country install for the leaf springs on a K5 Blazer, I just want to be honest with you. There's no like before or after thing at the end of the video. This is strictly me installing the leaf springs, the shocks, steering stabilizer, just kind of like what I went through and how I did it on my Blazer. Because after the install, this is what it looks like. So I mean, obviously I still have it apart and everything. I just have a lot of work to do before I put it back together. So I just wanted to do just a video of the install. That way, you know, I got the video in there and everything else I can do on separate videos. But there's no before or after picture if you wanted to see like how it is standing after the install. It's definitely higher. I can tell you that. This is only 2-inch, but yeah, I mean, this is how it looks. These are the new leaf springs, U-bolts, shocks. Yeah. So, if you watch the rest of the video, you basically see how I do everything and the troubles I went through and whatever else. So yeah. I think I'm going to kind of do like a detailed installation on this, just because from looking on YouTube and everything like that, I don't think I really saw one for a Blazer, maybe like a K10 or K20 or something like that. But, and not really like an installation thing. It's more of like a review after, which is no problem. I mean, good stuff. Still learned a lot from it. But, I mean, I'm going to kind of maybe do like a step-by-step process of it. So, step 1, remove 8 nuts from U-bolts, which attach axle housing to spring. Remove the U-bolts, remove shock absorbers. So, step 1 is remove the nuts. And obviously once you get the nuts off, then the U-bolts are going to fall out. And then and that's going to be off, right? So, obviously you do that on the other side as well. Then you're taking the shocks off, right? I have all new shocks, I have all new hardware, so I'm going to take all the hardware out as well. Same with this. I'm just going to put them to the side. Alright, so that's step 1. Before I started taking the springs off and getting everything ready, I already lubricated all the nuts and hardware that I plan on taking off. So hopefully it goes pretty easy on getting those off. Got all my hardware loose. So before you remove everything, I would suggest, I mean, it doesn't say in the directions or anything, but I loosened every single hardware that I know I'm taking off before I jack the truck up. Just because I feel like it's safest. That way it's not jacked up and you're pulling really hard on bolts and everything. Second, because they're freaking in there. They're tight. So it's definitely better to do it while it's on the ground. That way once it's up, boom. As you can see, I got all my bolts backed out. Even the front for the springs, rear on the springs, all my shock mount bolts, boom. Obviously the U-bolts, and done on this side as well. But as I said, I'm replacing everything, like bushings and stuff like that. Oh, but if you're gonna be painting and stuff like I am, or already did actually, and you just tape this up, you got your bump stop here, yeah, just go ahead and take it off, because it's easier to get to these bolts without your bump stop in the way. And now look at that, it's all rusty just because I didn't take it off before I painted. So lesson learned. Next, I already loosened my sway bar mounts right here, because I got new bushings for this as well, and the part that attaches right there, I got new of those, but I'm not doing that right now. Obviously this is connected to where the U-bolts connect to, so I'm gonna do all this at once. I mean, it took me like an hour and a half maybe to do all these, just to break them, just to loosen them all up. So, but yeah, that's it. And actually, you're gonna need literally every single size you got of wrenches, deep sockets, impacts, sockets. This is a different size, those are different sizes, that's a different size, the front's a different size than the rear. That sway bar bolt is huge, so I think I used a 30 on it actually. Yeah, a 30. I only had a 27 and a 30, and a 27 was too small. All right, here we go, back in the garage. Next morning, working on the Blazer, trying to get the front springs in. So I got it chalked. I don't have my chalks, they're with my camper, so I just got some wood under there. So next move is, after I loosened all the bolts on everything, is I'm gonna take the shocks off on both sides, and then take the U-bolts off. I got my shocks off. I am putting the bushings inside the leaf springs. I already did this one, but I actually decided before I install the leaf springs that I'm going to do the sway arm bushing first. That way I can take this piece off and still have these bolted in, and I'll put the new bushing in here, put this back onto this bracket, which the U-bolts and the new nuts are going to go on. Alright, but so right now, this kit, the front springs don't come with the bushings in, so you have to install them. So obviously the bigger ones go in the bigger hole on the leaf spring right here. Alright, so as you can see, one end is bigger than the other. The bigger end goes up forward right here. So once I'm done with that, I am going to take this off, which is the other side of the sway arm bar, and just put the new bushing in there. This one's pretty messed up, not sure if you can see, but yeah, I'm gonna do that. That way I can paint this bracket and that bolt that I'll probably ruin by taking it off, and I put it back on, and then I'll be able to paint it and make it nice looking. And then that way this bracket's already painted before I put on my new bolts. That way I can see my nice new shiny bolts on there. Alright, so change of plans. I got the bolt off, obviously, but taking that bushing out is probably going to be pretty hard, and especially getting the other one in with it sitting just like this. So what I might end up doing, after I put the new leaf springs on and everything, I might just take the whole sway bar off all at once. That way I can kind of clean it up, put all new bushings in, because I even have new bushings for the sway bar where it connects right here, as you can see. Boom. I got new of those that are gonna have to be replaced as well. So I might as well just take the whole bar off, clean it up, take all the old ones out, put all new ones in. So I think that's the game plan for the sway bar. All right, almost ready to lift the truck up and start taking off the leaf springs. So I painted all the areas that I could that were covered in rust after I took the bolts and things off. This one over here. I was able to take that piece off because obviously I already disconnected it from the sway bar. So I got it over here, drying up. So, I want to put new bolts on for the sway bars, not for the sway bars, for the springs, obviously. I go right in here. I don't want to use old hardware. So, I bought a lot of new stuff from LMC, except when you get it, it just has a part number. So it doesn't really tell you where this nut is for. So I gotta log back in and try and match up the parts to where I want them. So when I was jacking it up, I had some problems separating the leaf spring from the pad on the bottom here. In the directions it says to have 4.5 inches from there, and I was maybe getting like 1/2 inch. So I'm hoping disconnecting this linkage right here will separate everything from the axle, so it won't raise the axle, and I'll be able to get more lift from the frame when I lift it up with the leaf springs. Yeah, getting this off was pretty difficult. Obviously this is a castle nut, and then there's a pin that goes through. That was completely rusted. I basically had to chop off the pin on each sides and then break it free. So I'm almost done with that, but I wanted to show you before I took that off. And I'm hoping this solves the problem, so I'll be able to lift the whole front end off away from the axle. Yeah, obviously I had to disconnect this linkage right here. Doesn't tell you in the directions, but that definitely helped for sure. I have this down a little bit just because it's a lot safer than just relying on this one jack. But I can see how it's going to be a little difficult lining up the axle hole and trying to move it back and forth. Honestly, it's this that's making it difficult, because when you pull it, it pulls it back in and stuff. But anyways, game plan for the spring is to put the front end in first, and then once that's bolted in, this bracket here moves, so I think it's going to be easier to line up exactly where I want to or need to put the other end in. Alright, so having issues here. In the directions it says that you need to get 4.5 inches from the bottom of the old leaf spring from to the pad right there where it sits, right? So I lifted as far as I could with this jack, and it's not going to go any higher. So therefore it doesn't give me enough clearance to get the new spring in. I've tried every single way, I've tried everything. So long story short, I'm gonna have to put the old spring back on until I figure this out. So I did all this work And it's a bummer, but I gotta put it back together. Alright, I got my old leaf spring back in now, just temporarily. Took the new one out so I can lower the truck, put it back down on the ground, and took the jack out, put all these mats underneath the jack, and then I'm about to jack it back up. That way we can get this old one off and put the new one in. Hopefully that gives me enough clearance for the new one. Alright, so this is taking longer than expected, like usual. So I started working on the other spring, opposite of the one that I already removed and replaced. So one of the bolts in the spring is literally like stuck in the bushing. So the bolt is free on the outside, if that makes any sense. Like I can spin it with my breaker bar and everything from there, and it spins on this end as well. So the whole bolt can move, but it's stuck like on the inside of the bushing. So I tried cutting it, that isn't working. I tried hammering it out, that isn't working. So, alright, another day back in the garage, working on the front end of the Blazer, trying to get this leaf spring off. I haven't figured out really what I'm going to do in order to lift the frame higher to get more clearance when putting in the new springs. But I mean, I know this bolt in here is pretty stuck, so it's gonna have to come out either way. So I decided to just grind it off with my cutoff wheel here, or cut it off with my cutoff wheel. But it's going actually pretty well. It's actually not too bad. As you can see, I'm almost done with this. I gotta do that side. But yeah, it's in there, so good thing I had this and I'm able to do it. Alright, gonna go over my setup that I have before I started cutting off the bolt for the spring. So basically, I have the jack lifting up the frame of the whole entire Blazer. That way it raises the leaf springs off of the axle, so they're actually off. They're not supported on the axle right now. I just have it barely off. I don't want to lift it too high, and that way if something did happen and it fell back down, it would land perfectly on the axle. And I also kind of have it slightly inside the pins, like the pin inside the hole that's on the pad right there. And I have my jack stand right here, just in case. And I obviously have the jack lifted up the frame. And then I also have this jack underneath the spring, and I pushed it all the way in to lift, because obviously this is just free floating, right? So it's no weight on it except it holding from this bracket and the bracket in the back right there. So I just have this fully supported with this jack, so when I do finish cutting it off, it doesn't fall. You know, I don't have the weight of the spring holding it down for when it gets cut off. And obviously I have it jacked up, so once I do cut it off, you know, the truck's not gonna fall over or anything like that, and the spring isn't gonna go crazy or anything. Alright, back in the garage, different day. Got a different setup going. I was able to grab some stuff from work, and that's mine. That's the one from work. These jacks as well. They're a little bigger, a little stronger. I was able to grab some wood as well that I cut up, give myself that extra height when trying to lift it. So should be able to lift it now. Since I already cut this spring off with the bolt, I'm gonna do this side first and try to get it going. Alright, got the old leaf spring out. And obviously the one on the left is the old one, the one on the right is the new one, and you can see the difference in the arch. Alright, here we go. I got the driver's side leaf spring in. I got all my hardware in. It's not tightened down yet. But this thing needed to be jacked up very high. And this is only a 2-inch leaf spring addition or in height. So if you're doing like a bigger lift or something like that, I would definitely recommend a oh, I won't. Definitely recommend like a car lift or something if you got one or have access to one, because I mean, you see what I got going on. This setup, in order just to lift it high enough, the frame from the axle, so I can get the leaf spring in there. I'm gonna start on the passenger side. I already got the back half off. Now I just gotta take this off, slide in the new one. Nope. Also got new pads, spacers for the pads that goes underneath the leaf springs and on top when you put on the U-bolts. And I also got the new hardware right there. Alright, so once you got your leaf spring at least in place, between your two brackets right here and right there, this is what I got. I just got it set on top of the pad right there with my new spacer in there. But I'm doing the back first. I'm gonna put the bolt through here, and then that way when I go up forward I can kind of move the spring back and forth, because this moves, this bracket moves. So once the leaf spring is on there, I'll be able to move it exactly where I want, so I can match up the forward bolt. I got the leaf spring in, I got all the hardware in. Now it's just time to tighten them down nice and tight, and then we can lower the truck back down onto the axle. It doesn't say in the directions, it doesn't give you a spec on the spring bolts. It gives you a spec for the U-bolts. So I'm just gonna tighten them down pretty tight. I'm gonna search the internet, see if I can find something, see if I can find like a torque spec or anything. Alright, so after I tighten down the hardware for the springs, you can see that I got it just tightened down for now, because obviously you don't want this to come in super hard and basically squeeze the bushing. So I just tightened it down until you know, it was tight up against this bracket here. I know it looks matte, but that's how it was before, and I'm sure that's from when they tightened it down. But I don't have it super tight right now, because I was reading basically to just get it to that point, and then once you lower it down on the axle and then you do the U-bolts, then you torque it down to, I was getting a few different answers, you know, I like to read different websites, whatever, just to get multiple answers or to, you know, match up the same answers. But basically I got like somewhere between 20 and 40 foot-pounds. You know, I was reading directions of other companies, things on installing leaf springs and everything, and one said to do 40, so I'm probably go somewhere. I'll start to see before I get to the 40 point on the torque, to see how the brackets are doing, so they're not super tight against the bushing, you know. Alright, time to move on and get this thing on the axle. I actually ended up loosening the nuts from the bolt a decent amount. That way I had more room and more play with the leaf spring. so I can match up the pin with the hole. That way it gives me more flex with it. I'm able to move it. I'll be able to. Hell yeah! Just lowered the truck, and I got the leaf spring sitting on the pads, matched up perfectly with my holes. But yeah, definitely leaving these loose gave me enough where I could pull the spring over to match up the pin that goes on the pad there. And then this one was actually kind of tight. So if you're doing this and you don't think it's gonna go in, it goes in. Once you start to lower it, it forces itself in there. So I mean, the pin's in there pretty good. So yeah. Now that I got the leaf springs down on the axle, now it's time to put the U-bolts on. So obviously I'm doing one side at a time. So I need to get that piece that I painted over here, put it on here, and then we'll do the U-bolts one at a time. Obviously this is the one that gets the long U-bolt because it goes around the housing right here, and then it goes down here. So this is the one side that needs that long one. Alright, got all my new hardware and my bolts ready. This is obviously what I mean by the longer one that goes in that spot. But even got a brand new pad for the top of the leaf spring, and got my new hardware. Let's put it on. Alright, so I got another problem going on. As you can see, this mount, it's loose, it's spinning, it's not seated flat on the spring. As you can tell, the bolt that comes up from the bottom of the leaf spring is pretty high. So it touches the bottom in here, and you go like that. Because the one that's on the original leaf spring is obviously a lot shorter. So I'm just gonna have to cut that off a little bit. So when doing the U-bolts, just put it on, forget about this top bracket for now. Put on this U-bolt just because it's tight. And obviously, you know, you wanna get it on the axle first, and then once you get it to like a decent height, maybe like to here, then put this top bracket on. That way these two bolts can go through the hole on the bracket, because obviously, you know, I already tried different ways and it didn't work, and that was the best way that worked. So yeah, so then I used a mallet just to kind of hit it up a little bit like that. Boom. So for some reason they made the bolts super long, like longer than it needed to be. So I'm having trouble with my my deep socket isn't even going on all the way, as you can see. So I'm going to have to cut off the top of the bolt a little bit. Yeah, it sucks that I cut brand new hardware, but I figured it's better to cut it and have the nut torqued down correctly compared to me just taking a wrench and just yanking on it as hard as I could, you know. So I'd rather have a cut bolt with, you know, torqued down to the right specs, especially on these springs. You know, you want even pressure on all four U-bolts and the nuts. So once I do that, once I cut it, I'm gonna torque them down and then do the other side. All right, so done installing the leaf springs. I got all the hardware torque down to the spec. These are 120 for the U-bolts. For that, you do like small increments, like moving around. Like what I really did, I started at, once I had them like hand tight all the way and the bolt all the way up, and this flush with the mount right here, I did that for each one. That way I wasn't pulling on one side more than the other. And then once I had it there, I got them all to about 80 foot-pounds, and then I kind of went up in like 10 increments. So I did 90, went all the way around, 100, went all the way around, 110, all the way around, up to 120, all the way around. So I had even pressure for each one. I ended up torquing the spring bolt down. What I did was 35 foot-pounds on each end and on both sides, obviously. So now the leaf springs are done. They're on there, they're good. I'm going to be working on this now. I already got the bolt out for that. And I'm going to put new bushings and everything. And obviously you can see this bolt. These bolts are huge. So now I just got to take it out up here. And then this bar will come out. And then I can clean up the bar, put new bushings in, and then reinstall everything. Got my bar out. As you can tell, these bushings are a little worn. Getting all those bushings out was very difficult. I basically had to drill all the rubber piece of the bushing, and then that way drill it all out, all around, and I was able to knock it out. So yeah, now I got my piece, I just painted it, I'm waiting for it to dry.
The first thing you need to do is make sure the floor is clean and dry, then lay out the damper pad according to the diagram.
Alright, so while that's drying, I'm going to be working on the steering stabilizer shock, because I am tired of that thing leaking everywhere, as you can see. So it's time to get that thing finally off. Alright, got my old stabilizer out. This is a new one. Obviously it has a tapered end. Actually went in pretty easy, the new one. So starting to look good with all the new hardware and parts on there. Alright, got my shocks set up. About to put the shocks in. I got my new hardware. This is for the bottom, this is for the top. So they're different sizes. This kit doesn't come with the hardware. I got all the hardware separately from LMC. And about to go in. Alright, got the shocks in. I got this side in, the driver's side. So I'm working on the passenger side. So what I had to do on the other side is, if you see this, see how the shock moves up here, sways back and forth. I don't really like that. So what I did is I just tightened it down all the way on this bracket. That way it doesn't go back and forth. The old shocks had the bushing that came all the way out the sleeve to fill in that gap. Obviously the new ones don't, and I can't just take that old bushing off because the bushing in here, you know, I don't feel like switching them all out and everything. I don't even know if they'll fit, but like into the actual shock mount on the shock. So what I did, basically just tightened it all the way down, and this bracket piece just pushed in up against here, and you know, I just did it hand tight. It's not super tight or anything. So that's my game plan. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but works for now. Okay, working on the sway bar. I got my new bushings in the bar. I got all my hardware set up. Time to put it in. And this is how the Blazer's looking right now. Got all my new shocks in, steering stabilizer, Leaf springs are complete. Feels good seeing all this new hardware and stuff like that on it. I do have a drag link coming. I have this whole part coming. It's just on, I think like the forward part is like on back order. Pretty pleased with everything. Not too bad. Took me a lot longer than expected, but it's definitely doable. I think I'm gonna wait on the rear leaf springs. That way, once I have it put back together, I'll obviously be able to take the Blazer back on the road. And at work, they have like a like an actual lift and everything. It'll be a lot easier to do the leaf springs. Because it was kind of sketchy lifting this thing pretty high in order to get those springs under. And those new leaf springs are have a lot more arch to it than the front did. So obviously it's going to have to go higher in the back. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with everything. I got new leaf springs, U-bolts, bushings, hardware for everything is brand new. So I feel pretty good about it, and I cleaned up a lot of stuff and painted as much as I could. But yeah, pretty much done for now.